Danianum ne adafo mechia obia meeting any akosua. I hope so obia hoye. For many of you who follow us, watch our videos, we say thank you. Now, and you say you build it on a video we did last week concerning Mr. Robert Gabriel Mugabe of Zimbabwe. Ufimu last week. He died on Friday, September 6, 2019 in faraway Singapore. Okoshena stayed in there for many months. Now this past weekend, Iwumi, September the 13th, and the president and the people of Zimbabwe, including the family, state funeral Zimbabwe in Harare. And there was a 3-day mourning declared by President Emerson Mnangagwa in honor of Mr. Mugabe. Now, first of all, you better wish the people of Zimbabwe, the family, the president, all those that admire and see Mr. Mugabe as their mentor, or those who revere him. Yema Omunina Yako. And all the people of Africa, particularly the Pan-Africanist. Yema Obia Yako. Now, before yebe kaya semi, yebe wo and say fuabia yepe say bisa, we want to ask a couple of questions. Yedi ashaya semnase. Na ene say, pese mi bisa o, say obi a national hero uwa ewo say a kan neoma swa waya if you say waya tia nipa, and none of us is claiming to be self-righteous here. And none of us is claiming, say, yang wrong you be. Yes, we all make mistakes. We all wrong somebody. We all stepped on somebody's toes. But my question is, say you systemically, say you shada, you buapaye kind of thing, systemically commit atrocious crimes and wrong somebody. Ain't it that's old age or death? And now, say being a national hero, no, does that erase Sabonena? And should we shove those atrocities such as massacre, say nipakum, and nipakum by accident, but nipakum systemic one, yes, shada, a release death squad, ekukunipa. That's death, old age, being a national hero. Does that one give us a license to do that? Number two, does our status, does that allow us to just shove it under the carpet? And should people be shoving that under the carpet? And when you power who find some best suppress those who want to speak up about it and now yes why you can want some no, you can want some now you're born. Now what about those people, the person, the perpetrator wronged? Until almost do they have a voice? And are they allowed to talk about it? Now yanka wasama eboa ana emwa. Does that help people to heal or not to heal? Or does that build resentment and build more anger and create problems for society, particularly those that were wronged? Now, the entire maybe me, I will explain. And I say, in general, people don't want people or more admire for them to be critiqued. And it's even more so for Africans, for the people they consider heroes. And I say, anti-colonialist, and I say political figures that omo favorite, in per se, you become wasem. The moment I become wasem, no, they begin to chastise you. And yet, Mr. Mugabe, some of us here commenting, oh, it will be a God who judge at the end. So I'm like, why are you making it about God? Nipa no na braba obeboy no ho asem ne yeka. Na ono ne God there, what has that got to do with me? Say no ono ne God ntem asem. It is not what I'm talking about. Asasi so boni a odi tia amanfo. Eno ho asem ne yeka. Yes, na say they become good, no. So also they was analyzing. And it's even more important to talk about the bad because Nyoma, it is a killing. Any wronging people and how they affect people's life. No? You can't just shove it under the carpet. It affects people. The policies affected people. Into a was a funeral. Many of the West shunned the funeral because Mr. Mugabe, towards the end of his reign, did a number of things that upset the West. Ibini said Ojiji the farms from the white minority. Ibini the manner in which we treat the opposition, violence, torture, all kinds of brutalities against the opposition leaders, particularly Mr. Morgan Shangarai, who last year or so. Violence, rape, killings. In 2008 in Kwana, Mr. Mugabe and any militants were said to have killed about 200 supporters of Mr. Morgan Shangarai after Oluse's first round of the presidential elections, in which Mr. Shangarai scored 47.8% and Mr. Mugabe 43%. Because of the torture and violence unleashed on Mr. Shangarai supporters, Mr. Shangarai opted out during the second round. And this attracted sanctions. Although the West sent their condolences to Mr. Mugabe, they generally shunned this funeral and Mr. Mugabe towards the end of his reign. In fact, Mr. Mugabe was suspended from Commonwealth in 2008 and also faced sanctions and all kinds of other measures. Because of that, you see Mr. Mugabe nanka open shopping power London hono Tony suit. And ne baba ne first son, Robert Jr. Apparently Nani ambition was to play basketball in the States. But because now Mr. Mugabe and his family were banned, Robert Jr. couldn't pursue that ambition of playing that. Apparently, these sanctions also caused a lot of bitterness about Mr. Mugabe. So now, this explains the resentment and the utterances against the West, including calling Mr. Blair a little boy, and at some point calling Britain as enemy country, and accusing Mr. Obama and using derogatory terms against former U.S. Secretary, Security Advisor, and his Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, calling her a daughter born out of slavery, serving the master's instructions, which is very, very offensive. Mr. Mugabe, in fact, offended a lot of people with his outrageous utterances and also contributed towards the West shunning his funeral and a person towards the end. The funeral, many of them were not expected to attend, and I do not think many of the world leaders attended. Nonetheless, many Africans attended this elaborate funeral in a 60,000 capacity stadium, which I heard was virtually empty because many Zimbabweans could not care less about it. And I'll explain why. African leaders, nonetheless, including South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, Uhuru Kenyatta of Kenya, Angolan President, Mozambique, Ethiopia, and Yang former President Jerry John Rawlings also led a delegation that attended the funeral. Many people around the world, including Prime Minister Boris Johnson, also sent their condolences to the Mugabe family, the people of Zimbabwe, as well as President Emerson Mnangagwa. The funeral was characterized by police and military band, and Mr. Mugabe's casket draped in the Zimbabwean flag, green, black, gold, and red. There were banners in Zimbabwean language stating Hamba Kanle Gushongo. It means go well Gushongo, Mr. Mugabe's clan name, which is Gushongo, essentially the Yi. Some called him a pioneer in nationalist politics, and some people were definitely wishing him well and still see him as a liberator, a hero, and all that of the people of Zimbabwe from white minority rule. Others also did not feel so much. The funeral Nankasano, despite the elaborate celebration, was characterized by a dispute between Mugabe family and the Zimbabwean government and the military on the other side. Disagreement in the same. The government wanted to bury Mr. Mugabe next to other Zimbabwean national heroes on a very simple lot, and also next to the first wife Sally Mugabe. Apparently, due to the bitterness from the Mugabe family, partly because of the way our military removed Mr. Mugabe, apparently they were feeling bitter and annoyed, and they wanted a private funeral in Mr. Mugabe's hometown of Kutama, Bessie. This dispute led to now an agreement, some negotiations between traditional chiefs, the government, the family. Right now, the plan is Mr. Mugabe will be buried in newly to be built mausoleum within 30 days to be elevated above all heroes. This is a Heroes Acre monument to be built, which will be raised up above all heroes. This is a special mausoleum to be elevated above all heroes' graves. One year bury Mr. Mugabe, according to some officials of Zimbabwe and Al Jazeera and NPR News. Now, Zimbabweans are divided. The government and the family are divided. Many of us Africans were also divided. There are some that still see Mr. Mugabe as a saint, almost. Couldn't do no wrong, or they want to shove Mr. Mugabe's the atrocities and the wrongdoing and the collapse of the nation, they want to shove under the carpet, including thousands of citizens who were murdered in the 1980s and after, hundreds displaced, and those that starved and died of cholera, poor health care. Mr. Mugabe Ekoseye. The Mugabe's government was characterized by massive unemployment, hyperinflation, and water and food shortages, and so many other problems. In fact, Mr. Mugabe betanaso na life expectancy will grow about 59% in 1980. Obetanaso in 1987, life expectancy was a little over 60 years. By the time, towards the end of the reign, now Zimbabweans life expectancy equal 44 years. This shows the extent of how much harm or yet to the economy. Now, Mr. Mugabe, credited it wasn't like that. In fact, he was credited for a number of things at the beginning. Besides fighting in the freedom movement, Mr. Mugabe pursued a policy of non-discrimination, non-racial Zimbabwe, whereby or pursue non-racial education, whereby many Zimbabweans acquire very high education. In fact, Zimbabwe is seen as one of the African countries with highly educated population. Zimbabwe used to be the breadbasket of Africa in the 80s until Mr. Mugabe started the policies of land acquisition and political suppression, as well as a one-party movement, whereby many opposition leaders, including many of those who fought before him, alongside him, mysteriously disappeared or were chased out of the country, some of them including Mr. Joshua Nkomo. And the torture and the violence against Morgan Shangarai, former union leader who contested Mr. Mugabe in the 2008 and 2013 elections. In many of these, Mr. Mugabe was accused of rigging these elections. Where many of you may also recall to know that Mr. Mugabe was not always shunned. In fact, in the past, Mr. Mugabe was, during the policy was hailed by the West. In fact, had met world leaders, including Queen Elizabeth, including Princess Diana, Hillary Clinton, and many other prime ministers, Blair, Sarkozy, and many of those. It was only after Mr. Mugabe started to seize the white farms and started to rig elections and massively cause violence against political opponents. That is when the West started to impose the sanctions against him, which Mr. Mugabe never softened his stance and continued to let the people suffer. The ironic thing that needs to be said is that during all this time now, Mr. Mugabe and his wife lived a lavish life. The wife went on extravagant spending. In fact, would go spent in a day to Singapore or Hong Kong or Dubai, and in a day, this woman is said to have sometimes spent in one day about 60,000 pounds in expenditure buying designer goods. And as I said, there was another time she was said to have spent 75,000 pounds worth of goods outside of Zimbabwe. The expenditure earned him the name Disgrace. And another name they call this woman, Mrs. Grace Mugabe, is Gucci Grace, for a lavish expenditure. This family was spending so lavishly whilst the people of Zimbabwe suffered. In fact, Mrs. Mugabe was said to be behind Mr. Mugabe's power obsession. Mrs. Mugabe and Nema using limousines ran around. Nema, two boys, Robert Jr. as well as Chatunga, were said to be running around in limousines. Tunga, for example, at some point was said to pour a 200-pound champagne on a 45,000-pound watch just to show off. The Mugabes have been accused of profiting from the white farms they acquired and also benefiting from their status. In fact, Mr. Mugabe is said to be worth at least $1 billion in property and asset, 25-bedroom mansion, and a villa in Hong Kong, as well as another property in Singapore where Nibano attended school. Niba Bona Mugabe attended, 31-year-old attended school. Mr. Mugabe and the wife also is said to be worth at least $50 million. The wife who was a former secretary of Mr. Mugabe. This woman, in fact, was said to have been having an affair with Mr. Mugabe at the time where Mr. Mugabe's former wife was sick, way back in the 1990s. The couple married in 1996 after the wife died of kidney disease or cancer in 1992. The couple married in 1996, by which time Mr. Mugabe and Grace had already had 2 children. And actually, after Mr. Mugabe turned 73 years old. Na the entire meka saa asɛm wei nyinaa no sɛ, whilst the people of Zimbabwe were suffering, the Mugabe family was lavishly spending and living a luxurious life. Mr. Mugabe's wife was said to have hated even former vice president. She's been accused of beating a South African model. In fact, the last 2 years, somewhere around 2017 or 2018, there was an arrest warrant by the South African prosecutor against Mrs. Mugabe for beating a model in South Africa, which Mrs. Mugabe denies and claims self-defense. The Mugabes are said to own properties and lands near Harare, as well as in Dubai, Singapore, and South Africa. Now, mausoleum is what we see. Apparently, it will cost millions of dollars. So, any dispute around Mr. Mugabe's funeral, a microcosm of what he represented. He was a polarizing figure because Mr. Mugabe, for others, he is a hero. For others, he's quite despised. He's the man who was a hero and became a tyrant and an autocrat or a dictator who later on wouldn't share power with anybody else but concentrated power amongst himself, many people, particularly a wife who had an ambition to become a president. Because of that, Mr. Mugabe apparently fired the former Vice President Joyce Majuru, as well as the current president, Vice Alfayano, just before Mr. Mugabe was ousted by the military in 2017. Apparently, Mr. Mugabe towards the end was a very, very sad man, according to a family spokesperson, Walter Chitkakwa. Now, media, the judgment is between one and God. The American say the suffering and the wounds and the scars left by the Mugabe family will stay for many, many years. In fact, certain Zimbabweans feel, even though in their language, Ubiwa Yankana Wasambono, but to some of them, as far as Mugabe is concerned, an exception should be made. Because Bonea or Diayo Mono is so grave, so many of them do not feel say it is easy to forget. Mr. Mugabe, in the end, had speculations of having a prostate, which was sort of kept a secret. The family denied and claimed cataract and what have you. In the end, something may kill us. But the American say, "Yeba we are say, na yenya power no. Yen find bubra papa. Power no, ma yen concentrate and ma yen selfish. Na yedi allowed it over the people under us. In my mind, it is better to leave a good name than to harm so many people. Because it is not very easy to just shove things like that under the carpet. Especially say all wrong obia, it stays with them forever. Particularly when you never apologize. So, in Shona language, whereby they say in their language, say, Wafa Wanaka, meaning say, speak no evil of the dead. Ye fe Mr. Mugabe abraba obe boy. Na yesua bibi afimo. Ye ba wi ase a. Ye nhwe se yenya power na se tumi ebro bi so a. Ye behwe tumi ni yi. Mistakes can be forgiven. When we wrong, we should apologize. We should never lord our power against others. And for those Africans that don't want people to talk about their heroes, they need to be talked about. Because it is not just about the people who wronged others. It is not so much about your heroes alone. It is also so much about the people they wrong. the people that were harmed. It has to be talked about no more to me healing. We need to live a life that we can look back and not regret so much, because dying doesn't erase Bonenaya per se. Mr. Emerson Mnangagwa, despite Kwame Modene Fasono, he's been very gracious. He's brought the Mugabe family together. He's tried to compromise. He's treated Mr. Mugabe in a very humane and very honorable way. To me, we should learn some lessons from him as a person by how gracious he's been. Likewise, we should look at Mr. Mugabe's life and we should call a spade, not shove things under the carpet. We wish Mr. Mugabe well and the people of Zimbabwe well. May he rest well, and may we all learn lessons. Rest well, Mr. Mugabe. Thank you all for listening. Nadine and Akosia. Mr. Mugabe will be put to rest. Is expected to be resting within 30 days in the new mausoleum being constructed. Thank you, everyone. Take care of yourselves.
Yeah,